I invite you to listen to my original story on the Purple Heart Stories channel. And please support it with a like and a subscription if you enjoy it. Chapter 1: Betrayal. My name is Chris Warren, a professional soldier, and until the age of 34, I thought I knew who my enemies were. As a military drone operator, I was used to seeing the world through a virtual reality visor, where everything is clearly divided into allies and enemies. Until someone gave away my position and a sniper bullet in Yemen turned me into a disabled person, a fragment of my own life. Now I'm confined to a wheelchair, and my beautiful wife, Diana, a brilliant neuroengineer, found me a job at her company, Neurosphere, where I was supposed to find my new calling, helping people. If only I had known what role was actually prepared for me, I would have preferred to die there, where at least it was clear who the real enemy was. The nightmare is always the same. Sand, the scorching hot Yemeni sand crunching on your teeth. The dawn sky burned out to whiteness, and a sudden flash of pain between the shoulder blades, as if a red-hot metal rod is piercing the spine through and through. I fall, not feeling my legs, and tumble face down into the dust. I scream, but the scream gets stuck in my throat. I always wake up at this moment. Just like now, I abruptly emerged from the nightmare, gasping for breath with a pounding heart. The pre-dawn twilight barely seeped through the blinds. My t-shirt was soaked with sweat, my fingers clutched the sheet convulsively, and my legs, useless pieces of flesh below the waist, didn't even twitch. As usual. Next to me, an empty half of the bed. Diana went to work before dawn again, for the 5th time this week. I pulled myself up on my hands, fumbled for a flask of whiskey on the nightstand. A morning ritual. One gulp is enough to dull the pain, not the physical one, painkillers cope with it well, but the one that gnaws from within. The one that whispers that I'm no longer a man but a disabled person, a burden to my wife, an object of pity for former colleagues. Outside the window, a fine rain drizzled, drumming on the cornice monotonously and aimlessly, just like my new life. I pulled myself up on special bars installed above the bed and moved into the wheelchair. My own body seemed like a traitor, strong arms and torso of a soldier, and a dead weight below the waist. Today is my first day at Neurosphere, Diana's company. Or rather, the company where she works as a leading neuroengineer and where she wrangled a position for her disabled husband. Wrangle, that's exactly the word she used in a conversation with her mother on the phone, thinking I was asleep. I rolled the chair through the empty house, past the bedroom which now resembled a hospital ward with bars and medical devices, past the bathroom, where the shower stall had been adapted for a disabled person, through the living room, where Diana and I used to sit in the evenings, discussing the day, planning vacations, dreaming of children. Passing by her dressing table, I caught an unfamiliar scent, a new perfume, more expensive than she used to buy. In the closet hung suits I hadn't seen before, designer ones, with price tags that used to make our eyes pop out of our heads. A lot has changed since Diana got promoted, since I became a burden. I caught my reflection in the mirror, a haggard face, sunken eyes, a week's worth of stubble. God, how I hated this face. The face of a victim. I need to shave, put on a clean shirt. Look like a human, not a cripple, evoking pity. While shaving, I pondered the upcoming day at Neurosphere. Diana explained that I would be an operator of avatars, robotic machines for working in dangerous areas. It's almost like your drones, Chris, she said with forced enthusiasm. Only instead of joysticks, control is exercised through a neural interface. You will think about the movement and the avatar will move. Almost like in that old movie, remember. It will give you freedom. Freedom? What an interesting word she chose. As if I wasn't in a wheelchair but in prison. Maybe it was so. The car slid silently through the morning streets. A sedan adapted for disabled people, another reminder of my helplessness. Next to me sat Jeff, the driver Diana hired, a silent guy who tried hard to pretend he didn't notice how I hated every second of the trip. every second of dependence on others. Neurosphere towered over the city like a spaceship from the future, a glass tower with curvilinear contours, as if flowing into the sky. At the entrance, I was met by Mike Donovan, the last person I expected to see here. "Chris, you old rascal." Mike smiled, but in his eyes I read a strange mixture of sympathy and guilt. "Long time no see." "Mike, what on earth are you doing here?" He slapped me on the shoulder, trying not to notice the wheelchair. Head of security, imagine that. After demobilization, I was looking for a job and then such a chance. High technologies, good salary. I looked at my former colleague, trying to reconcile this sleek manager in an expensive suit with the Mike Donovan with whom we lay in the sands under fire, covering each other. Something subtly changed in him, or in me. "No one told me you worked here," I said. Surprise, Mike smiled tightly. I asked myself, I wanted to personally show you everything, like in the good old days, right? The good old days, when I had legs. Mike led me through an impressive foyer with holographic displays showcasing the company's technologies. Employees in stylish clothes scurried back and forth, some casting curious glances at me. On their faces, I saw that special smile that every disabled person recognizes, a mixture of sympathy and awkwardness, a desire to help, and at the same time turn away faster so as not to catch misfortune. "Mr. Rivers was personally interested in your arrival," Mike said, calling the elevator. Rivers, the director of the company. I was surprised. Why would the head of a multi-billion-dollar corporation be interested in an ordinary operator? Mike shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "He always keeps an eye on talent, especially former military personnel with remote operations experience." In the elevator, Mike began to talk about the company, scientific developments, rescue operation projects, plans to create a new generation of avatars. I listened half-heartedly. Something in his voice and the way he carefully chose his words alarmed me. An old military habit, noticing details that don't fit into the overall picture. The Neurosphere training center resembled a mixture of a military base and a spaceship from a science fiction film. A spacious room with dozens of workstations, each equipped with a chair resembling a dental one, with a neural interface. A complex structure resembling a helmet with many thin electrodes. And the avatars, humanoid robots lined up against the far wall. Here and there, technicians in blue overalls were visible, performing adjustments or diagnostics. "Impressive, isn't it?" Mike nudged my shoulder lightly. "This is where you will connect." One of the technicians, noticing us, awkwardly rose from his chair and hurried towards us. A lanky guy around 25, with nervous movements, disheveled hair, and a constant look of surprise on his face. "You must be Mr. Warren," he exclaimed, extending his hand. "I'm Sam Riley, lead avatar technician. Glad you joined us. I've heard so much about your experience with drones." I shook his hand, nodding the strength of his grip, despite his fragile build. "Nice to meet you, Sam, and just Chris, please." Sam nodded vigorously, as if on springs. "Of course, Chris, I've prepared a special station for you, considering your condition." He stumbled, blushing. I smiled to ease his embarrassment. "Considering I'm disabled, you can say it directly, Sam." "Yes, of course," he muttered. "Follow me." Sam led us to one of the stations by the window. The chair had been modified, with special attachments to easily move from the wheelchair. "I developed this configuration myself," Sam said with pride. "Enhanced neural interface, extended sensory range, increased proprioceptive feedback." In human terms, I chuckled. "You'll feel the avatar better than other operators," Sam explained. "Full immersion. Some say it's almost like being whole again." He said the last phrase almost in a whisper, as if afraid to hurt my feelings, but I was grateful for his honesty. "Want to try?" he offered, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. I glanced at Mike, who was watching us with an unreadable expression. "Let's do it," I nodded to Sam. "Let's see what this thing is capable of." The connection process was strange and familiar at the same time. The neural interface enveloped the head like a second skin, thin electrodes touching certain points on the skull. Sam quickly explained the technical details, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "You'll feel a slight tingling at first, that's normal," he warned. "Close your eyes and imagine you're standing. Just imagine." I closed my eyes, feeling a little silly, but obediently imagined standing, leaning on both legs, as I had done thousands of times before the injury. And then it happened. As if the soul was pulled out of the body. A second of disorientation, and then I was standing. Not on my own legs, no, but standing. I really felt, the solid floor under my feet, the power and balance of a metallic body. I opened my eyes, opened the avatar's optical sensors and saw the world through them. The picture was clearer than ordinary vision, the colors more intense, the field of view wider. I saw my own body sitting in the chair with the neural interface on my head. I saw Sam, watching the monitors with a tense expression, and Mike, crossing his arms over his chest. I raised my hand, the avatar's metallic hand, and looked at it, wiggled my fingers. They moved the way I wanted, without delay, without effort. "Amazing, isn't it?" Sam's voice came from afar, although I could see him standing nearby. "Yes," I replied through the avatar's vocal synthesizer, surprised by the metallic tinge in my own voice. "It's incredible." I took a step, then a second. The gait was a little mechanical, but I quickly adapted, remembering how to control my body. My real body, not this accursed shell of a cripple. "You're mastering it faster than most beginners," Sam remarked with admiration. "Usually, it takes several days to get used to it." "Military training," I explained, "a habit of quickly adapting to new systems." I turned to Mike, who was watching me with an unreadable expression. "What do you say, Mike? Do I look like a cyborg from Terminator?" "Impressive," he nodded. "But that's just the beginning. Wait until you see what these machines are capable of." I spent almost an hour in the avatar, mastering basic movements, learning to calibrate strength and precision. When Sam finally disconnected me, returning to my own body felt like falling into a pit. The wheelchair, the useless legs, the limited movement, it all crashed down on me with renewed force. But something had changed. Inside me flickered a spark of hope. For the first time in months, I felt that maybe not everything was lost, that I could still be useful. After the lunch break, a humiliating experience when the cafeteria worker persistently tried to help me with the tray despite my protests, I accidentally ran into Diana in the hallway. She looked impeccable, a strict business suit, her hair gathered in an elegant bun, minimal makeup emphasized her natural beauty. Seeing me, she froze for a second, then quickly approached, smiling broadly. "Chris, how's your first day?" She leaned over and kissed me on the cheek, placing her hand on my shoulder, a gesture calculated for witnesses, a demonstration of the ideal couple, a loving wife and her disabled husband. "Not bad," I replied. "Your friend Sam is an interesting guy." "He's a genius," Diana nodded. "A little eccentric but a true visionary in his field. Got a minute? I want to show you my office." I followed her through a maze of corridors. Employees we met nodded to Diana with respect and a slight fear. I suddenly realized that I knew almost nothing about her work here, about her status, about her life in recent months, while I was undergoing rehabilitation. Diana's office struck me with its size, a spacious room with a panoramic window, minimalist design, and the latest equipment. One wall was completely occupied by holographic displays with some diagrams and graphs. As soon as the door closed behind us, Diana's smile faded. She walked to the table, creating distance between us. "How are you really?" She asked, not looking me in the eye. How am I really? I repeated. You're asking what it's like to be on display for all these people, to be a special project of your company. Our company, Chris, she corrected gently. You're part of the team now, and I'm very proud of you. Proud? I couldn't suppress the bitterness in my voice. That your crippled husband can now control a robot, a stunning achievement. Diana sighed, rubbing her temple, a gesture that appeared after my injury, a gesture of fatigue from the burden I represented. I didn't mean that, and you know it. I'm proud that you didn't give up, that you're here trying to start over. I wanted to say something sharp, but I held back. She was right. I was here trying. Tell me about your work. I changed the subject. What do all these diagrams mean? Diana perked up, as always, when it came to her research. She began to explain the principles of the neural interface, showing graphs of brain activity, diagrams of signal transmission. See this wave pattern? This is how the brain encodes movements. We decipher these signals and convert them into commands for the avatar. But the most interesting thing is not even that. She talked enthusiastically about her work, about breakthroughs in understanding neural connections, about the possibilities of technology. And all this time, she never looked me in the eye, as if she was talking not to me, but to a faceless audience. I reached out and took her hand. Diana. She flinched, as if from an electric shock, and for a second I saw fright in her eyes, quickly replaced by a forced smile. Sorry, I got carried away. You know how I can get fixated on work. I know, I nodded, but maybe we'll have dinner together tonight, celebrate my first day. She looked at her watch. I have an important meeting in 5 minutes, and then another one. I'm afraid I'll be late. As usual, I couldn't hide my disappointment. Chris, please don't start. You know how busy it is now. I know, I sighed. Go to your meeting. She looked at me with an expression that resembled regret, then quickly gathered folders from the table. Should I call a helper for you? I'll find my own way, thank you, I replied dryly. Then see you tonight. She pecked me on the cheek and hastily left, leaving behind a trail of unfamiliar perfume. Through the glass wall of her office, I saw her meeting with a tall, elegant man in an impeccable suit. Something in their gestures, in the light familiarity of their touches, in the way he leaned towards her, saying something, caused me a pang of jealousy. I moved closer to the glass, trying to hear their conversation. He'll soon get used to the new role, and all our problems will be solved. I heard the man's voice. Diana glanced nervously around and led him towards the elevators. I was left alone in her office, feeling like a stranger in the world she had built without me. I was about to leave when the door opened, and Sam Riley entered with a tablet in his hands. "Oh, I'm sorry," he exclaimed, seeing me. "I thought Dr. Warren was here. I need her signature on the testing protocols." "She just left for a meeting," I said, "with some tall man." "Ah, that's probably Mr. Rivers," Sam nodded, sitting on the edge of the table. "They're constantly whispering. Sometimes they even come together on weekends. You wouldn't believe the strange things that happen in this building after closing time." He broke off, noticing my expression. "Sorry, I shouldn't have. It's none of my business, of course." "No, it's okay," I said, trying to keep a neutral tone. "What strange things?" Sam lowered his voice, even though we were alone. "There are departments that even I don't have access to, and sometimes avatars are sent on special missions without registration in the general system. I notice because I have to do the maintenance after." "Oh, never mind. I talk too much." "No, continue," I encouraged him. "I'm interested in everything related to avatars." "Really?" Sam's eyes lit up. "Most operators don't care about the technical details. They just want to know how to control and what to press." "I'm not like that," I said. "I like to understand how everything works." Sam beamed like a child who had received a Christmas present. Then you should check out the technical laboratory. I have a beta version of a new neural interface there. I could show you, if you're interested, of course. I smiled, sincerely for the first time that day. Very interesting, Sam. Lead the way. Sam talked nonstop while driving me to the technical laboratory. A chaotic stream of technical information, theories about the future of neural communications, and personal anecdotes. I listened more carefully than he assumed. Something in the sincerity of this strange genius touched me, and more importantly, I felt that he could become a valuable source of information. Because somewhere deep inside, I was beginning to sense that something was wrong at Neurosphere, and that my wife was not who I thought she was either. After an intensive technical tour from Sam, I went for a mandatory medical checkup. The company's clinical department was located on one of the lower floors, a sterile space, more like a space station than a hospital, with the latest equipment and a minimum of staff. Dr. Alina Chen was waiting for me in the examination room. A short, fragile woman in her 50s with perfect posture and strong surgeon's hands, inconsistent with her age and fragile physique. Her gray hair was gathered in a tight bun, and her face with barely noticeable Asian features seemed calm and impenetrable. Only her eyes, dark, shiny, betrayed deep fatigue and something else: sadness. "Mr. Warren," she nodded with a slight smile. "I'm Dr. Chen, head of the neuromedical department. I'm glad you joined our team." Her voice was soft, with a barely perceptible accent. "Just Chris, please," I said, already tired of formalities. "As you wish," she nodded. "Let's do a standard examination. I need to assess how your nervous system responds to the neural interface after the first connection." She worked methodically and efficiently, checking my reflexes, reading the readings from the tablet, asking precise questions about my sensations during the connection to the avatar. In her movements, I felt that special economy of gestures that only experienced surgeons have. "Sensitivity is higher than expected," she muttered, studying the data. "Very interesting." "What exactly?" I asked. She looked at me with slight surprise, as if she had forgotten about my presence. "Your brain demonstrates exceptional neuroplasticity, the ability to adapt to the avatar interface. This is unusual for patients with your type of injury." Something in her voice caught my attention, as if she hadn't said everything she wanted to. "Dr. Chen, can I ask you something?" Of course, she continued to take notes, not looking at me. "Did you operate on me after the injury?" I asked directly. Her hand trembled, and the tablet slipped out of her fingers, falling to the floor with a crash. For a second, she looked at it as if she had seen a snake, then quickly picked it up. "I'm sorry," she muttered. "Yes, it was me, but let's focus on the present, Mr. Warren. The past won't give us much." And yet, I insisted. "A strange coincidence, don't you think? You operated on me in a military hospital, and now we meet here." "Not so strange." Her voice sounded tense. "I consult in several military hospitals, and a few months ago I received an offer for a permanent job here. Such coincidences happen." She avoided my gaze, continuing to check the data. Something was wrong. Her tension, her carefully chosen words. It reminded me of interrogations of prisoners of war, when a person tells the truth but not the whole truth. "Dr. Chen," I decided to change tactics. "Tell me honestly, is there any chance that I will ever walk again?" This question finally made her look me in the eye. For a second, something like remorse flashed in her gaze, quickly replaced by a professional mask. "You know the official diagnosis, Mr. Warren. Complete spinal cord rupture at the T9-T10 level is not recoverable according to modern medical standards." And unofficially, I asked quietly. She turned away, pretending to check the equipment. "I can't give false hopes. It's contrary to medical ethics." Not false hopes, but she didn't say there are no hopes. "I understand," I nodded. Thank you for your honesty." She quickly finished the examination, already without unnecessary conversation. When I was about to leave, she handed me a small card. "Your permanent pass to the medical department. If you experience any discomfort after connecting, contact me immediately, at any time." I took the card and noticed an inscription scrawled on the back. "Emergency consultation, only a personal meeting." Eleanor glanced quickly at the surveillance camera in the corner of the room and shook her head almost imperceptibly. I hid the card in my inside pocket, not showing that I had noticed the inscription. "Thank you, Dr. Chen. See you." Leaving the medical department, I felt the paranoia that had always been my faithful companion in the war blooming with renewed force. What was Dr. Chen hiding? What game was my wife playing with this Rivers? And why was a company of this level so interested in a disabled operator with average performance? Questions without answers, yet. The week flew by in intensive training. Every day, I spent several hours connected to the avatar, mastering new skills, getting used to the sensations of an artificial body. I progressed quickly. The instructors did not hide their surprise at my ability to adapt to the system. With each day, controlling the avatar became more and more natural. I learned to adjust the strength, precision of movements, use the expanded sensory capabilities. It was like coming home to a body that obeyed, that did not betray. Diana hardly appeared at home, citing an important project. We existed in parallel. She went to work before I woke up and returned when I was already asleep, or pretended to be asleep. On Friday, after a particularly successful simulation of a rescue operation, I decided to make a spontaneous gesture, a surprise for Diana. Something that could bring us back to the old days when we were just husband and wife, not a disabled person and his caregiver. When the training session ended, I asked Sam to give me an extra hour of connection to the avatar. "I want to practice more," I explained. "I feel I can improve accuracy in a confined space." Sam hesitated. "I'm not sure. There is a usage protocol, but on the other hand, additional practice can be useful." He looked at his watch. "It's lunchtime now. Most of the technicians have left. I could stay and look after the systems while you train." "That would be great," I smiled. "I promise nothing complicated. I just want to get used to it a little more." Sam agreed, and I connected to the avatar again. But instead of the training zone, I directed the machine to the exit of the building. "Hey, where are you going?" Sam asked anxiously through the communicator. "It's not according to the protocol." "I want to check the navigation in a real urban environment," I replied. "Just one small circle around the building, nothing dangerous." I understood that I was putting Sam in an awkward position, but I hoped for his sympathy and trust in me. "It's against the rules," he muttered, but I could already hear his fingers tapping on the keyboard. "Okay, I'll reconfigure the tracking systems. I'll say it's testing new navigation protocols if someone notices, but please don't stay longer than 30 minutes. "You're the best, Sam," I said, leading the avatar out into the street. For the first time, I felt the real world through the avatar's sensors. The bright sunlight, the noise of traffic, the gusts of wind registered by tactile sensors. It was amazing. I directed the avatar to a flower shop not far from Diana's and my house. The seller was a little confused to see a robot, but quickly oriented himself when I explained that it was testing new technology. After a few minutes, I was already holding a bouquet of fresh lilies, Diana's favorite flowers. The next stop was our house. I wanted to leave the flowers as a surprise so that she would find them when she returned from work. Perhaps it was a naive gesture, but I felt a strange sense of freedom moving around the city in the avatar's body, doing something normal, human, and not just performing simulations and tests. I was approaching our house when I noticed a familiar car on the driveway, a black Bentley of the latest model. exactly the same as Director Rivers's. A strange coincidence. Alarm raised its head. What was Rivers doing at our house during working hours? And why was Diana also here and not in the lab? Driven by a mixture of suspicion and fear, I used the avatar to peek into the living room window. Tactical habits worked automatically. I chose a position where it was difficult to notice me, but with a good view. The scene inside stunned me. Diana and Rivers were sitting on the couch, too close to each other. They were discussing something, laying out folders with documents on the coffee table. An ordinary work meeting. Maybe, but why here and not in the office? I activated the avatar's enhanced hearing, one of the features Sam talked about with particular pride, and I heard their conversation clearly, as if I was in the same room. "Our sniper did the job perfectly," Rivers said, stroking Diana's shoulder. "Your husband received exactly the injury we needed. Now he is completely in our hands. Soon we will implement the full version of the chip, and he will become our best operator, without even suspecting it." I froze, not believing my ears. Our sniper did the job perfectly. They were talking about me, about my injury, as a planned operation. Diana flinched but did not object. "And of course, after each mission, complete memory erasure?" she asked, and I almost didn't recognize her voice, cold, professional. "Of course," Rivers replied. "Just like the other 11, ideal performers for delicate tasks, trackless eliminations, untraceable operations. And for them, it's all training missions, virtual. And then we press the button and they completely forget what they did. A perfect plan. Isn't it, darling?" The avatar's legs buckled. I almost fell. My world was collapsing in an instant. My injury was not an accident. My wife was involved in it. My whole nightmare was part of a coldly planned experiment. I wanted to burst inside, grab Rivers by the throat with these metal hands, squeeze until I heard a crunch. I wanted to scream, demand explanations from Diana. How could she? Why? For what? But the tactical part of my consciousness, the one that had saved me in battle dozens of times, took over. I retreated from the window, forcing the avatar to move smoothly and quietly. My first task was to survive, gather information, plan actions. This was no longer my wife and her boss. These were enemies, and I was in enemy territory, wounded but not broken. Every step of the avatar on the way back to Neurosphere was given through strength. Inside me raged a hurricane of emotions, fury, the pain of betrayal, bitterness from realizing my own helplessness. The mind refused to accept what it had heard, but the heart already knew the truth. Reaching the company building, I handed the avatar over to the technicians, mechanically answering Sam's questions about the testing. He was so engrossed in the data that he didn't notice my condition. After disconnecting from the system, I felt physically sick. The training session was officially over, and Mike offered to drive me home. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he remarked as we walked to the elevators. "Are you okay?" "Tired," I replied curtly. "Thank you, but I'll manage myself. I want to be alone." Mike didn't insist, and I was grateful to him for it. The last thing I needed right now was to explain myself to a former colleague who might also be involved in this conspiracy. I left the building and directed the wheelchair to the park across the street. I needed time to think, assess the situation, plan actions. The day was drawing to a close. People were rushing home from work, happy, whole, not suspecting that their world could collapse in an instant from the betrayal of the closest person. My life in recent hours had been divided into before and after, as it once was divided into before and after the injury. Only now I understood that the injury was also part of someone's plan. My disability, my pain, my struggle, all this was the result of cold calculation. The phone in my pocket vibrated. Diana was calling for the third time. I didn't answer. What could I say to her now? "Hi, honey, I know you're cheating on me and participated in a conspiracy to make me a cripple." It started to rain. Large drops fell on my face, mixing with the uninvited tears of rage. I didn't notice that I was soaked to the bone, didn't feel the cold. Inside me burned a fire of hatred that no bad weather could extinguish. I remembered my military training, numerous missions behind enemy lines. Then everything was simple. We knew who the enemy was. Now the boundaries were blurred. My wife, my support, my closest person turned out to be a traitor. The company that gave me a second chance used me as a guinea pig. But I was not helpless. Even now, in a wheelchair with paralyzed legs, I remained a fighter, and I had an advantage. They didn't know I had exposed them. The first rule of survival in a hostile environment is to not let the enemy suspect that they have been exposed. I will play the role of a grateful cripple, admiring the new opportunities. I will smile at Diana, follow the instructions of the instructors, demonstrate progress and loyalty. And in the meantime, I will look for allies. Dr. Chen was clearly hiding something, and her secret message could be the key. Sam, for all his naivety, could become a valuable source of information. And who knows, maybe Mike is not as loyal to the company as he seems. I took out the phone and finally answered Diana's call. "Sorry, honey," I said in a voice that sounded normal, even warm. "I was delayed in additional training. I'll be late, don't wait up." "Chris, where are you?" I heard concern in her voice, sincerely sounding concern. God, what an actress. "I called Sam, he said you left a long time ago." "Decided to take a ride around the city," I replied casually. "I haven't been out in the fresh air in a long time. I met an old friend, we lingered in the bar. Don't worry, I'm taking a taxi." "Have you been drinking?" Notes of disapproval appeared in her voice. "Chris, with your medication." "Just a couple of glasses," I interrupted. "I'm okay, really, see you at home." I hung up, and my face instantly lost all expression. My eyes stared blankly at the rain drumming on the armrests of the chair. I remembered the expression used in the Special Forces: act according to the situation. Now the situation required cold calculation and patience. I made a vow to myself. I will find out the whole truth, find evidence, and bring to justice everyone who participated in this conspiracy. Starting with my beloved wife. I steered the chair towards the metro station, taking Dr. Chen's card out of my pocket. On the back was a scratched phone number, obviously not connected to the official channels of Neurosphere. The rain intensified, as if nature was mourning my lost life. But I no longer looked back. Ahead was a war, and I was going to win it, even if I had to fight from this cursed chair. This was not just betrayal, it was a challenge, and I accepted it. Chapter 2: Reconnaissance. The old traditional Chinese medicine clinic smelled of sandalwood and something bitter and tart. I squeezed the wheelchair through the narrow door with difficulty. The building was clearly not designed for people like me. The bell above the entrance jingled as if warning of my arrival. In the dimness of the room, I distinguished the silhouette of Dr. Chen among the glass cabinets with jars of herbs and ancient medical instruments. "Mr. Warren," she said quietly, "I'm glad you decided to come." She looked different than within the walls of Neurosphere, simpler, more natural, and at the same time, older, as if she had shed a mask along with her white coat, exposing her real face. "There are no cameras or bugs here," she said, pouring green tea into tiny cups. "I check every day." The doctor placed a cup in front of me, from which fragrant steam rose. Her hands trembled, but her eyes looked firm. "You want to tell me something, Dr. Chen?" It wasn't a question. She slowly nodded, as if deciding to jump into ice water. "Yes, I operated on you after the injury, but not quite the way you were told." I clenched the armrests of the chair so hard that my fingers turned white. "Under duress, I implanted an experimental neural chip in you, developed by your wife. It's not a standard medical protocol. The chip allows you to not only control the avatar but also influence my memory, I finished for her. Erase memories of completed tasks. Dr. Chen looked at me in surprise. You already know. I heard Diana's conversation with Rivers. My injury was not an accident. She nodded sadly. They choose candidates according to certain criteria: military experience, psychological profile, absence of close relatives, except for a spouse involved in the project. Then they organize accidents. How did they force you to participate in this? I asked, trying to control my anger. Instead of answering, she opened her laptop and turned the screen to me. In the photograph was a young Asian woman in a white coat from a medical university, smiling at the camera. Next to her were tracking schedules, lecture schedules, copies of personal messages. My daughter, Eliner's voice trembled. Rivers said he could destroy her with one phone call. I silently looked at the photograph of Chen's daughter. She was a little younger than me. Perhaps she also dreamed of saving lives, like her mother once did. Is there a way to block the chip's functions? I asked. Aliner hesitated, then nodded. Theoretically, yes, but I will need access to the laboratory in time, and it's dangerous if they suspect. I'm willing to risk it. You don't understand, Mr. Warren. You are not the only one. 12 disabled operators, each unknowingly performing special missions. People are dying. High-ranking, influential people. Officially, accidents. I'm being used as a murderer. I didn't ask but stated it. She turned away, unable to meet my gaze. There's something else, she said after a long pause. Your injury, it's not quite what you were told. I froze. What do you mean? Nerve damage is there, but there's no complete spinal cord rupture. They lied to you so that you wouldn't try to recover, so that you would be dependent on the avatar. The world around me darkened for a moment. A sip of tea burned my throat, bringing me back to reality. Are you saying that I can? Not completely, she said quickly, but partial recovery is possible. I can help experimental therapy sessions, secretly of course. I looked at my useless legs, feeling something new kindling inside, not just rage but hope. A dangerous, desperate hope. When do we start? That's amazing, Sam exclaimed enthusiastically, his eyes shining like a child's on Christmas. You really want to know how the reverse neurosensory circuit works? We were sitting in his technical lair, a small laboratory on the 5th floor of Neurosphere. Officially, I was here for optimizing sensory settings. Unofficially, building trust with the person who could be my key to the company's systems. Tell me in detail, I encouraged him. I'm interested in the whole process. Sam literally lit up. Techies like him rarely encounter genuine interest in their work. Most are satisfied with knowing the on button. Look, he unfolded a 3D model of the avatar on the screen. The standard protocol provides a delay of 0.4 milliseconds between the brain impulse and the action. But I modified the compensation algorithm, and now the delay is only 0.13 milliseconds. He spoke quickly, disjointedly, jumping from topic to topic, but I carefully followed his train of thought. To an unprepared person, his explanations would sound like an alien language, but military experience with high-tech equipment helped me grasp the essence. And can these avatars act autonomously? I asked, as if in passing. Officially no, Sam lowered his voice to a whisper, although we were alone. But I developed a backup protocol. If communication with the operator is interrupted, the avatar can continue the last command for a limited time. It's an undocumented feature. He winked at me, as if we were conspirators in a children's game, unaware of how close to the truth he was. What about tracking? Does the company always know where the avatar is? Usually yes, Sam nodded, moving closer. But there is a theoretical possibility to create a blind zone in the monitoring system. I experimented with this for debugging navigation algorithms." He broke off, as if suddenly realizing that he was saying too much. But the desire to share with an understanding interlocutor outweighed caution. "Want to see something really cool?" Sam lowered his voice to a whisper, but not a word to anyone. He took a small metal case from under the desk and opened it, displaying a miniature device resembling a drone the size of a palm. "My personal project," he said with pride. "An autonomous observation module can monitor an object for up to 72 hours without recharging, transmitting an encrypted signal, completely undetectable by standard detection systems." "Sam, you're a genius," I said sincerely. He smiled shyly, but it was clear how he bloomed from praise. "I have a lot more ideas. For example, if you integrate a quantum encryptor into the communication system, you can create a completely secure data transmission channel." I listened to him, feeling a mixture of admiration and regret. Sam was truly brilliant, but naive. He didn't understand that his talents were being used for criminal purposes. He didn't realize that by creating his amazing devices, he was becoming an accomplice to murders. But soon, I hoped, he would understand. And then I would need not only his genius, but also his straightforward indignation. A woman in a strict suit sat in a cafe across the street from the Neurosphere training ground. She was drinking coffee and taking notes in a notebook, looking like an ordinary office worker on lunch. But something in her manner, in the way she unobtrusively but attentively watched the training ground, caught my attention. I was on a planned urban maneuvering training, controlling the avatar through an obstacle course simulating an urban environment. The route included passing by the cafe. When I passed by, the woman raised her eyes for a second, and our eyes, or rather my optical sensors, met. In that look I saw a professional assessment. That's how colleagues look. That's how one of us looks. On the next training session, she appeared again, now in different clothes but with the same focused manner of observation. She was writing something on her phone, sometimes taking pictures, like an ordinary passerby. I decided to take a risk. Using an untracked route developed with Sam under the guise of optimizing the navigation system, I directed the avatar to follow her when she left the cafe. She noticed the surveillance almost instantly. This confirmed my suspicions about her professional training. But instead of trying to break away or call the police, she calmly stopped at a newspaper kiosk, bought a newspaper, left a note on the table and walked away at a measured pace. I picked up the note, "Parked blue Ford 3 blocks from here, 20 minutes." It could be a trap, but it could also be a chance to find an ally. I directed the avatar to the specified location, constantly scanning the area for an ambush. The blue Ford was standing exactly where it was said. The same woman was behind the wheel. I stopped the avatar next to the car, ready at any moment to activate the emergency shutdown protocol developed by Sam. The woman lowered the window and looked directly into the avatar's optical sensors. "I'm Rachel Cortez," she said without preamble. "And who are you?" I hesitated. How much could I trust her? "Avatar operator," I replied through the voice synthesizer. "Name?" she asked demandingly. "Does it matter?" "Possibly." I was silent, and she nodded understandingly. Caution is a good quality, especially when working for Neurosphere. "You're watching the company," I stated. "I'm conducting an unofficial investigation into a series of suspicious deaths," she said. "All the threads lead to Neurosphere, but I don't have any evidence. The Bureau thinks I see conspiracies where there aren't any." She showed me a tablet with files, photos of the deceased, data indicating the company's involvement. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Information, evidence, anything that will help stop them before new people die." I studied her face through the avatar's sensors, harsh, determined, with a shadow of fatigue. In her eyes burned a fire that I knew well, the fire of a truth seeker, no matter how unsightly it may be. I may have access to certain information, I said cautiously, but I need guarantees. What kind? Immunity, not only for me but for several people who can help. They didn't know what they were involved in. Rachel thought about it. I can't give official guarantees without evidence, but unofficially, if the information leads to real arrests, I'll do everything possible to protect the sources. It wasn't ideal, but the best I could count on. How do I contact you? I asked. She handed over a miniature communicator the size of a button. Encrypted channel, works at close range, undetectable by standard scanners, military development. I took the device with the avatar's metal hand. Why do you trust me? Rachel smiled faintly. I don't trust you, but I have few options, and I'm good at reading people, even when they talk through a robot. She started the engine. Be careful, these people stop at nothing. I nodded my mechanical head and stepped back, allowing her to drive away. Watching the departing car, I pondered the risks. Could Rachel be working for Rivers? Was it a complex game to identify disloyal employees? Or was she really who she claimed to be, a lone fighter for justice from the FBI, desperately in need of allies? In any case, she was a pawn that I could use in my game against Neurosphere. For the good old days, I raised a glass of whiskey, looking at Mike Donovan across the table. The dimly lit bar was full after the workday, the perfect place for a conversation that shouldn't be overheard. The music and the hum of voices created a natural sound barrier. For better times, Mike smiled crookedly, clinking glasses with me. We drank. The amber liquid burned my throat, spreading warmth through my body. I hadn't drunk since I sat in this chair. Doctors forbade it because of the medication. But today I needed Mike's clear head and loosened tongue. How did you even get into Neurosphere? I asked, pretending to just keep the conversation going. Mike stared into his glass, as if looking for an answer there. It was hard after demobilization. You know how it is. I knew. We are trained to kill and survive, but not to return to normal life. I was doing odd jobs, he continued. Security guard in a nightclub, then at a construction site. I was drinking too much. Liz couldn't take it anymore and left. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. He waved his hand. It's just the way it is. Anyway, I was at rock bottom when Rivers found me, offered me a job, a decent salary, said my military training was just what he needed. I took a sip, watching Mike down his glass completely, and immediately order another. And how did you find out about me? Mike's face tensed for a moment. By accident, I saw your name on the list of potential employees. Lies, the first direct lie of the evening. Come on, Mike, I leaned forward. We were under fire together, don't take me for an idiot. The alcohol was already affecting him. His eyes became clouded, his movements less coordinated. He drank like a person accustomed to drowning something inside himself. Okay, he lowered his voice. Rivers asked if I knew you, showed me your dossier, said you were the ideal candidate for the Avatar program, asked me to contact you as soon as you got out of the hospital. When was that? About a week after your injury. I kept my face impenetrable, although I was seething inside. A week after the accident, they were already planning my future. And you didn't ask why me. Mike clearly felt uncomfortable. He said he wanted to give you a second life, a new purpose, that you would be ideal because of your experience with drones. He took a big gulp. I believed him, Chris. I thought I was helping a friend. Maybe it was true, or a very skillful lie. With Mike, you could never be sure. That's why he was valued in special operations. What happened then? I asked, pouring him more whiskey. Did the job turn out not quite as expected? I'm just doing my job, he replied evasively. Like in the army, I pressed, without asking questions, even when strange things are happening. Mike looked up sharply. What strange things? Come on, Mike. You're the head of security. You see everything that happens in the building. Secret meetings, closed rooms, strange movements of equipment at night. He pretended not to understand, but I caught a shadow of concern in his eyes. It's a high-tech company, Chris. There's always some strange stuff going on there. And it never bothered you what the avatars are really used for. Mike froze, glass halfway to his mouth. Rescue operations, work in dangerous areas. And all, I looked him straight in the eye. No special missions, no unexplainable coincidences. The alcohol had done its job. His defense was collapsing before my eyes. I thought we were doing something good, Chris. I swear I didn't know. He didn't finish, but it was an admission. Mike suspected something, but turned a blind eye. A typical reaction of a soldier accustomed to following orders. I decided to go all in. What do you know about Sector Alpha? The effect was instantaneous. Mike sobered up before my eyes. Forget you heard that name. His voice became harsh. Seriously, Chris, for your own safety. So it exists. I didn't say that, Mike snapped. And I never will, especially after. He broke off, as if he had said too much. After what? I leaned forward. Mike sighed heavily, struggling with himself. Listen, you're my friend. You saved my life in Yemen. So I'll tell you just one thing, be careful, don't ask questions. Just do your job and stay away from everything else. He paid and stood up. I'm leaving, forget this conversation. I watched him go, staggering slightly. In his words I heard not only a warning but also fear. Mike Donovan, a man who fearlessly threw himself under fire, was frightened. This said more about Neurosphere than any words. Chris, you've been acting strange lately. Diana looked at me across the table. We were having dinner at home, a rare occasion when she came home from work on time. I cooked her favorite steaks with rosemary and opened a bottle of red wine she brought from France last year. Playing the loving husband exhausted me more than all the training with the avatar. Every touch of her hand, every smile, every kiss required acting skills I never had. Strange, I feigned surprise. In what way? You've become, I don't know, more distant, and at the same time more active. You keep staying late at the company, communicating with employees. Is that bad? I took her hand, forcing myself not to wince with disgust. You yourself wanted me to adapt, to find a new goal. Of course, she smiled, but her eyes remained wary. It's just a sudden change. A month ago, you hardly left the bedroom. She was right. A month ago, I was a broken man, immersed in depression and self-pity. Now a fire burned inside me, dark, fueled by hatred but giving purpose and strength. The avatar changed everything, I replied, keeping my eyes on her face. You were right, it really frees me. Something flashed in her eyes, relief, satisfaction, or a shadow of doubt. I'm glad, she said, squeezing my hand. You deserve it. What an irony. The woman who orchestrated my injury says I deserve a new beginning. How's your work? I asked, switching to the offensive. That project you're working on with Rivers, is it progressing? Yes, she sipped wine. We're in the final stage of testing. The first clinical trials of the full version will be soon. Full version of what? She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Neural interface, more advanced than the one you're using now. And how is it better? More complete sensory immersion, a feeling of movement practically indistinguishable from reality, and some cognitive optimizations. An interesting name for memory-wiping technology. Sounds fascinating, I feigned enthusiasm. Could I be a volunteer for the trials? She nearly choked on her wine. Chris, it's too early. The technology hasn't been fully tested yet. But someone has to be the first, I shrugged. And I already have experience with the current version. It makes sense to use me. Diana studied my face carefully, as if looking for signs of a hidden motive. I'll talk to Rivers, she finally said, but I'm not promising anything. There are certain selection protocols. Of course, I smiled. I just wanted to offer. After dinner, we watched a movie, an old romantic comedy we used to love watching together. Diana snuggled up to me on the couch, resting her head on my shoulder. In the darkness, illuminated only by the television screen, I allowed myself for a moment to imagine that everything was as it used to be. That the woman next to me was the same Diana I fell in love with. That our lives hadn't turned into a perverse game of lies and manipulation. When she fell asleep on my shoulder, I carefully moved her to the couch and covered her with a blanket. Then I silently steered the chair into her home office. I had about an hour before she woke up or checked where I was. Using a hacking algorithm shown to me by Sam, supposedly as an example of a vulnerability he found, I gained access to her laptop. The files were encrypted, but Sam, unknowingly, showed me how to bypass that protection as well. In deeply nested folders, I found what I was looking for: plans to implement the full version of the neural chip, lists of targets for elimination, dates of upcoming operations. Among the documents was a file with my name, a schedule of special training sessions, which were actually assassination missions. The date in the next operation field was a week from now. I copied the data, carefully hiding the traces of my intrusion. My heart was pounding like mad. Never in my life had I felt so vulnerable, even under enemy fire. When I finished, I returned to the living room. Diana was still asleep. I wondered if she was having nightmares. Did her conscience bother her? Or was she so sure of the righteousness of her actions that she slept peacefully, like an innocent child? I looked at her face, so familiar and so strange, and thought, how did it happen that the woman who was once my home became the most dangerous place in my life? The abandoned industrial building on the outskirts of the city was perfect for a meeting that shouldn't have taken place. I struggled to maneuver my chair over the cracked concrete, wincing at the pain in my hands. A month of secret physiotherapy sessions with Dr. Chen was beginning to yield unexpected results. My legs still didn't obey, but I felt tingling in my muscles that hadn't been there before. In the dimly lit room, my secret allies gradually gathered. Alina Chen arrived first, carefully examining the building before entering. Sam appeared next, nervously looking around, like a spy from a cheap action movie. Rachel Cortez arrived last, businesslike and collected as always. I decided not to involve Mike yet. Despite our conversation in the bar, I wasn't sure of his loyalty. I checked the place for bugs, Rachel said immediately. Clear, but still, let's talk business and keep it short. I nodded and began. Each of us is here for our own reasons, but we have one goal: to stop Neurosphere. It's time to exchange information. Rachel placed a folder with photos on the table. 23 deaths in the last 18 months. Politicians, journalists, big businessmen. All are obstacles in the company's path. All are officially accidents or natural causes. She pointed out the coincidences of dates, locations, strange details in the autopsy reports. But there is not a single direct piece of evidence. The Bureau thinks I see conspiracies where they don't exist. Alina spread out medical files. 12 operators, including Mr. Warren. All are former military personnel with experience in remote operations. All became disabled as a result of accidents organized by the company. Sam looked at the documents with eyes widened in horror. I didn't know, he whispered. I thought we were helping people, saving lives. I put my hand on his shoulder. You're not to blame, Sam. You were used like all of us. Then I showed them my discovery, the copied files from Diana's computer. In a week, I'm supposed to have the latest version of the neural chip installed, I said. It will make me completely controlled by Rivers. After that, I will carry out their missions without even remembering it. A heavy silence hung in the air. We don't have much time, Rachel finally said. We need a plan. Alina spoke first. I can simulate the installation of a new chip, but actually implant a blocker. It's risky. Rivers will probably be watching the procedure. I'll modify your avatar, Sam picked up, already recovered from the shock. I'll add autonomous protocols and backup systems, and also, he lowered his voice although no one could overhear us, I'll create a spare mini drone. It will be your eyes where you can't send an avatar. Rachel nodded. I will provide a connection to a secure FBI server to transfer evidence. When everything comes out, even my bosses won't be able to ignore the facts. What about Mike Donovan? Alina asked. He controls the security systems. Without his help, we won't get into Sector Alpha. I'm working on it, I replied. He knows more than he says and he's eaten up by guilt. I think when the time comes, he'll make the right choice. The plan was daring and dangerous. So much could go wrong, but there was no time to look for another solution. There's something else, Alina said quietly when we finished discussing the details. Your physiotherapy, Mr. Warren. You're progressing faster than I expected. We finished the meeting, agreeing on ways to communicate safely. We left the building one by one, at different times and by different routes. When everyone left, I was left alone in the dimly lit room. Outside the window, rain was beginning, tapping rusty drops on the roof. I looked at my legs, concentrated, and was able to move the fingers of my left foot slightly. A small victory, a tiny step toward freedom, but even with partially paralyzed legs, I no longer felt helpless. I had a goal, a plan, and allies. In a week, everything will change. I will either restore justice or lose the last remnants of myself in the labyrinths of someone else's will. I had no choice, only the way forward through pain, through betrayal, through lies. To the truth, to retribution, to freedom. Chapter 3: Preparation. The night park was empty and silent. Only the rustle of leaves under the wheels of my chair disturbed the silence. I chose the place carefully, a remote alley, without surveillance cameras, with a good view of all approaches. Tactical habits die hard, even when your battlefield is a wheelchair. Mike appeared on time, military punctuality. He was walking, cautiously looking around, his hand under his jacket, surely on the handle of a pistol. He doesn't trust me. He's right. What the hell, Chris? He stopped a few steps away from me. Meeting at midnight, come alone. What kind of spy games is this? Instead of answering, I handed him a tablet with files copied from Diana's computer. He took the device suspiciously, turned on the screen. His face changed as he scrolled through the documents, disbelief, shock, anger. What the hell, he whispered. It's fake, it has to be. You know that better than me, Mike. I looked directly into his eyes. You've been working there longer, you've seen more. You've noticed oddities, but you've turned a blind eye. Mike threw the tablet at me. You're crazy. It's some kind of paranoid nonsense. Rivers is creating technologies that save lives and takes others. I opened the file with the names of the liquidated targets. Look here, Thomas Sheldon, journalist, died in a car accident 3 months ago. Do you remember him? Mike paled. What are you talking about? You yourself participated in organizing his murder, Mike. You thought it was a training of security systems. You were told it was a simulation. But the car that crashed into his car was controlled by an avatar. In Mike's eyes flashed the horror of recognition. How do you know? It will only get worse, I interrupted. Next month they are planning the natural death of Senator Holden. Guess who's providing perimeter security? Mike sat on a bench next to me, as if his legs had stopped holding him. God, I thought we were doing something good. I believed Rivers. We all believed someone, I said quietly. I believed my wife, who, as it turned out, is sleeping with him and helped organize my injury. Mike looked up at me stunned. What? The sniper in Yemen was not a militant. It was a Neurosphere man. They chose me as the ideal operator, and my injury is a carefully planned operation. Diana knew. She was helping them. I spoke calmly, but inside everything was burning with pain and rage. Saying these words aloud was like tearing off a bandage from an unhealed wound. All this time, I've been an accomplice to murder. Mike lowered his head, covering his face with his hands. I had never seen him so broken. Even when we were lying under fire, cornered with no hope of evacuation, he remained collected. I didn't comfort him. Instead, I ruthlessly continued. You can remain an accomplice or help put an end to it. We have a plan, but without access to the security systems, it won't work. Mike was silent, immersed in painful thoughts. I saw the struggle on his face, loyalty to the company that gave him a second chance, versus the moral imperative, versus the military honor on which he was raised. What exactly are you planning? He finally asked. To penetrate Sector Alpha, copy all the data, transfer it to the FBI. Stop not only Rivers but the entire criminal network of Neurosphere. The FBI? Are you crazy? I'll be put in jail along with the others. I leaned forward. Rachel Cortez, special agent. She promised immunity in exchange for cooperation. You are a valuable witness, Mike, not just an accomplice. A spark of hope flashed in his eyes. Are you sure she'll keep her word? No, I answered honestly. But I'm sure I can't afford to be a puppet of murderers any longer, and I think you can't either. Mike looked up at the starry sky, as if looking for an answer there. Then his face hardened, a resolve appearing in his eyes that I remembered well from our service. What needs to be done? We sealed the agreement with a military handshake, as we had done many times under enemy fire. There was no turning back. The underground technical laboratory of Neurosphere resembled the lair of a mad scientist from science fiction films, blinking monitors, holographic projections, unfinished avatar prototypes in various stages of assembly. Sam worked here at night, when most of the employees went home. The main modification is ready, he said, wielding a soldering iron inside the body of my avatar. Reinforced armor, additional power sources, and most importantly, an autonomous processor, independent of the central system. I watched his work with admiration. Sam's fingers moved with amazing speed and precision, connecting microcircuits, adjusting connections. If they try to intercept control, he continued, this system will activate the Ghost Protocol. Your consciousness will instantly return to the body, and the avatar will continue to execute the last command in autonomous mode. How much will they notice the changes? I asked. There are no external differences. Internal diagnostics won't show deviations either. I reconfigured the sensors so they would give the correct readings. Sam closed the panel on the chest of the avatar and went to the computer. Now the most difficult thing. Reprogram the communication channel so that it seems standard, but works through our encrypted network. His fingers flew over the keyboard, lines of code on the screen replacing each other with dizzying speed. It was strange to watch how this socially awkward, odd guy transformed when working with technology. Ready, he exclaimed after 20 minutes of intense work. Now the most interesting thing. He took a case from under the desk, opened it, and removed a miniature device, something resembling a tiny spider. This is a drone observer. I disguised it as an ordinary droid courier, of which there are plenty in the building, but inside, completely different filling. Sam proudly demonstrated the device. Autonomous operation up to 72 hours, hidden surveillance mode, direct encrypted communication with your avatar. Can track an object while remaining undetected. I programmed it to track Rivers. Now we will know his every step. Sam, you're a genius, I said sincerely. Ordinary engineering, he muttered shyly, but it was clear how pleased he was with the praise. Although, of course, not quite ordinary, I used several experimental solutions. He put the drone back into the case. Tomorrow, I will launch it into the ventilation system of River's office. In the meantime, let's check the modifications of the avatar. I connected to the system, the familiar feeling of the transition of consciousness into a metal body, but now with new shades. I felt greater strength in my limbs, a clearer visual range, finer sensory feedback. Try to activate shadow mode, Sam suggested through the communicator. Mentally imagine a triangle inscribed in a circle as we practiced. I focused, and something clicked in the system. The indicators on Sam's monitors changed. Great, he exclaimed. Now for Neurosphere surveillance systems, you are invisible. They think you are still connected to diagnostics in the lab. I took a few steps, testing the new capabilities of the avatar. The movements became smoother, the reactions instantaneous. I felt stronger than ever after the injury. Tomorrow we will conduct final tests, Sam said, looking at his watch. We need to wrap up, the morning shift will start soon. Before disconnecting, I asked, Sam, do you understand what we are doing? How dangerous is it? He became serious, for a moment becoming older than his years. I understand, Chris. I'm not as naive as I seem. They used my inventions to cause pain to people. I have to fix it. At that moment, I realized that Sam was not just a technical genius. He was a person with a moral compass who could not live on knowing the truth about his work. I disconnected from the avatar, returning to my own body. So far, everything was going according to plan. The day of the operation arrived. I woke up with a feeling of leaden heaviness in my stomach. Diana, unusually caring, prepared my favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs with bacon and freshly squeezed orange juice. Today is a special day, honey, she said with a smile that sent shivers down my spine. After the chip update, you will feel like a completely new person. A completely new person. Interesting wording for someone who was going to erase my personality and turn me into an obedient killer puppet. I'm a little nervous, I confessed, playing the role of a trusting patient. Is it safe? Absolutely, she assured, kissing me on the top of my head. I personally checked all the protocols. Dr. Chen is the best neurosurgeon in the country. You're in safe hands. A sizable commission gathered in the medical department of Neurosphere. Leading neuroengineers, technicians, and Rivers himself watched the procedure from a special room behind glass. In his eyes, I noticed the cold interest of a naturalist observing the reaction of an experimental animal. Elena Chen looked impeccably professional, a snow-white coat, a mask, hands in sterile gloves. Only a barely noticeable tremor betrayed her tension. First, we will introduce a light sedation, she explained to those assembled. Then, we activate the existing chip and replace its software core with a new version. The procedure will take about 40 minutes. I lay on the operating table, listening as Elena explained each step. For the viewers, it was a standard protocol. In reality, a perfectly rehearsed performance. Starting sedation, Elena announced, introducing the drug through an intravenous catheter. I felt drowsiness. The medicine was real, but the dose was calculated to create only the appearance of medical sleep. I had to remain conscious, albeit with my eyes closed. Through my half-closed eyelids, I saw the team bustling around, how Elena virtuously replaced key components. Outwardly, everything looked perfect. The monitors showed normal readings. The new chip successfully integrated with the nervous system. In reality, Dr. Chen was implanting a blocker, developed by her secretly, that would prevent any attempts to manipulate my memory. Integration completed, indicators stable. Alina reported after 40 minutes of intense work. The patient is regaining consciousness. I slowly opened my eyes, feigning disorientation and slight slowness, exactly the reaction the observers expected to see. Rivers came down to the operating room to personally check the result. He stood at the head of the bed, his cold eyes studying my face. "How do you feel, Mr. Warren?" he asked with a professional smile. "Good, sir," I replied with mechanical precision and emotionlessness, exactly as a person with a modified brain should respond. He asked a series of questions: my name, date of birth, basic cognitive tests. I answered evenly, without emotion, like a programmed machine. "Excellent," Rivers turned to Diana, standing next to him. "Your work, as always, is impeccable." She accepted the compliment with professional restraint, but I noticed a fleeting shadow in her eyes. Doubt, regret, or did I just want to believe it? "Recovery will take several hours," Alina said. "I recommend postponing training until tomorrow." "No," Rivers objected. "We will conduct basic testing tonight. The faster we confirm successful integration, the better." His tone brooked no objections. Alina nodded, casting a quick glance at me. We both understood our plan had just accelerated. We didn't have time for additional preparation. The game had begun. That evening, I was summoned to Rivers' office, a luxurious room on the top floor of the building with panoramic views of the city. I slowly wheeled the chair in, maintaining a blank expression. Rivers stood at the window, his back to me, looking at the city lights. He didn't turn around when I entered, as if demonstrating that he didn't consider me a threat. And why would he? I was just another of his puppets, drained, programmed. "How do you feel after the procedure?" he asked, finally turning to me. His gaze was studying, evaluating. "Ready to work, sir," I replied with a measured degree of impassivity. He nodded approvingly and got down to business. "Tomorrow night, there will be an important training mission." Rivers approached his desk, activated a holographic display. An image of a building appeared on it. "Headquarters of Neuralink, our main competitor." He zoomed in on the projection, showing the internal layout. "Your avatar must penetrate here and copy data from their secure server." He continued to explain the details of the operation, entry points, security systems, time frames. I listened carefully, memorizing every detail. It was not a training exercise, but a real operation of industrial espionage. "This is critical to national security," Rivers explained. "Serious vulnerabilities have been discovered in their developments that could be used by terrorists." Another lie, but I nodded seriously. "I understand, sir. The mission will be completed." "Excellent," he turned off the hologram. "The final briefing will be tomorrow at 8:00 p.m., the start of the operation at 9:00 p.m. Questions?" "No, sir." "Then you are free to go." I headed for the exit, but at the door Rivers called me back. "By the way, Warren, have you noticed any changes in your condition after the update?" A trap. He was checking how successful the modification was. A truly updated operator would not have noticed any changes. They would have seemed natural to him. "No, sir, everything is as usual." He nodded, clearly satisfied with the answer. I left the office, inwardly clenching with tension. As soon as the door closed behind me, I discreetly activated the miniature drone created by Sam to monitor Rivers for the rest of the day. In the hallway, I ran into Mike. We exchanged neutral nods, but as he passed by, he slipped an electronic key into my hand unnoticed. "Sublevel B, Technical Shaft 4, he mouthed. 2300. It was our backup route to Sector Alpha, in case the main plan failed. Returning home, I contacted the other members of our little resistance group through a secure communication channel. Alina confirmed that the blocker was active, Mike promised to disable the necessary security systems exactly at 9:00 p.m. Rachel prepared a secure channel for data transmission. Diana came home late when I was already pretending to be asleep. She moved quietly around the room, undressed, and lay down next to me. Through a slit of half-closed eyelids, I saw her staring at the ceiling for a long time before falling asleep. What was she thinking about? Was her conscience bothering her, or was she planning the next experiment on her husband puppet? Tomorrow everything will change. I will either restore justice or finally lose myself. The morning of the last day. While Diana was in the shower, I conducted a final test. I concentrated and tried to move my legs. After intense secret physiotherapy with Dr. Chen, the result exceeded my expectations. I could not only move my toes, but also felt tension in the muscles of my calves and thighs. I was even able to lift my left leg a few centimeters. It was still far from being able to walk, but for a person who had been told that he would never feel anything below the waist again, it was a miracle. Hearing that the water in the shower had stopped running, I quickly covered my legs with a blanket. Deanna came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, with wet hair. Previously, the sight of her bare shoulders and long legs would have made my heart beat faster. Now I looked at her with the cold calm of an operative on a mission. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, choosing clothes from the closet. "Yes, I feel rested." I imitated the degree of emotional detachment that I was supposed to demonstrate after the update. "Excellent," she smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Today is an important day, your first real mission with the new interface." Real mission. I wondered how many such missions I had already carried out without remembering it. How many lives had I cut short with the hands of my avatar? The day passed in the usual rhythm. I trained with the avatar, demonstrating stable but not outstanding results. It was important not to attract unnecessary attention. During the lunch break, I met with Sam so that he could check the modifications under the guise of technical maintenance. "All systems are ready," he whispered, rummaging through the avatar's insides. "The drone is tracking rivers. The communication channel with Agent Cortez is active." "Thank you, Sam. You're a true friend." He smiled shyly, clearly not used to such words. "Just doing what's right. Besides, it's the most exciting engineering project of my life." After work, I drove home, supposedly to rest before the evening training. In reality, I needed to pack a compact emergency kit, medicine, documents, a small amount of cash, everything that might be needed if I had to disappear quickly. In a special compartment of the wheelchair, created by Sam, I hid a miniature pistol that Rachel had given me, and a length of thin but strong wire that could serve as an improvised weapon. Military habits die hard. Leaving home, possibly for the last time, I allowed myself a moment of sentimentality. I looked at a photo where Diana and I were laughing against the backdrop of the Grand Canyon. Before the injury, before the betrayal, before the world turned upside down. "I wonder," I thought, "when exactly did you decide that I could be sacrificed? That for you I was not a husband but a guinea pig? When did the woman I fell in love with disappear?" Heavy questions without answers. I turned away from the photo and steered the chair towards the exit. There was no turning back. The control center of Neurosphere hummed with tension. Dozens of operators monitored the screens, technicians checked communication systems, analysts studied the latest data on Neuralink. Today's training attracted the attention of top management. Rivers himself was present, observing the preparation from the raised command platform. Diana controlled the settings of the neural interface, busily giving instructions to subordinates and carefully avoiding my gaze. Sam, more nervous than usual, fussed around the avatar, performing final diagnostics. "All parameters are normal," he reported, winking at me surreptitiously. It was a signal. The hidden modifications were functioning. Mike Donovan, in the uniform of the head of security, methodically walked around the room, checking equipment and personnel. Reaching me, he nodded almost imperceptibly. His part of the plan was ready. His face was tense but resolute. He had made his choice. Rivers descended from the command platform, approached the operators. His perfectly ironed suit and impeccable smile created the image of a successful businessman, innovator, philanthropist. Only his eyes, cold, calculating, betrayed his true essence. Today is an important day for Neurosphere. He began a short motivational speech. The data we obtain is critical to national security. Our analysts have discovered serious vulnerabilities in the developments of Neuralink that may pose a threat. I listened to him, experiencing a surreal feeling, as if watching a play where all the actors, except for me and my secret allies, believed in the authenticity of what was happening. How easy it is to manipulate people if you have power and a plausible story. And therefore each of you must strictly follow the protocol, Rivers concluded. Questions? No one asked any, of course. Finally, the moment of connection arrived. I was wheeled to a special chair. Technicians connected the electrodes, checked the readings. Sam personally adjusted the neural interface, supposedly taking into account the features of my updated chip. Connection in 5 seconds, Diana announced. 3, 2, 1. I closed my eyes, allowing the system to connect my consciousness to the avatar. The immersion went smoothly, the familiar transition, when my own body seemed to dissolve, and in return there was the sensation of the metal body of the avatar. Opening the avatar's eyes, I saw the world through enhanced optical sensors, clearer, brighter, with an extended spectrum. The control center appeared in a new light. I saw the infrared signatures of people, the electromagnetic fields of devices, the smallest details inaccessible to the human eye. Connection stable, Diana's voice sounded in my mind. All parameters are normal. Begin moving to point A. The avatar, controlled by my will, took its first steps towards the armored transport, which, according to Rivers' plan, was supposed to take me to the Neuralink building. Everything was going smoothly. The operators controlled the monitors. Diana monitored the neural interface indicators. Rivers watched with a satisfied smile. No one suspected that deep down in my consciousness I had already activated a hidden protocol created by Sam. The transport will take the avatar to a completely different place, and the monitors of the control center will display a computer simulation, indistinguishable from reality. Operation Retribution had begun, now or never. Chapter 4, Confrontation. The transport module with the avatar smoothly rolled out of the Neurosphere garage. Through the optical sensors I saw the night city, the ghostly glimmer of skyscrapers, the luminous pulsation of highways, the endless strings of lights. Beautiful. Even if this was my last evening as myself, I could appreciate this beauty. In the control center, my route to the Neuralink building on the other side of the city was being tracked on the monitors. Diana's voice transmitted coordinates, instructions, warnings. Estimated time of arrival, 15 minutes, the operator reported. The target perimeter is clean, the security systems are operating normally. Rivers was watching the operation from the command platform, nodding approvingly. Everything was going according to plan, according to his plan. But not according to mine. Through the windows of the transport module I saw the streets, blocks, intersections flashing by. We were moving strictly along the given route, until I quietly activated Sam's hidden protocol. Unbeknownst to the surveillance systems, the transport made an unexpected turn onto a side street, and the monitors of the control center continued to display the computer simulation created by Sam, a perfect simulation of movement towards Neuralink. Protocol Mirage activated, I whispered, knowing that no one in the control center would hear me. Heading to the real target. The transport turned around and moved back towards Neurosphere, to the secret underground entrance known only to top-level personnel. My heart was pounding somewhere in my real body, but the avatar's hands remained still, perfectly controlled. At the very moment when the transport approached the hidden entrance, Mike Donovan carried out his part of the plan, activated the emergency maintenance protocol, temporarily disabling certain security systems. On the monitors in the control center, this looked like a normal technical procedure. Minor interference in sectors B and C, Mike reported over the intercom. Nothing critical, standard diagnostics. I mentally thanked him, directing the avatar to the service door. The corridors of the underground complex were empty. There was a minimum of personnel here in the evening. The few technicians that passed by only nodded, seeing a standard model of the avatar. Nothing unusual, just another technical movement. Following the scheme received from a leaner, I moved towards Sector Alpha, the very secret department where all the secrets of Neurosphere were stored. With each step, the risk of detection increased, but my determination grew stronger. Too many lies, too much pain, too many innocent victims. Finally, I reached the end point of the route. A massive armored door loomed before me, the last obstacle between me and the truth. The control panel required a special access code. Sam had foreseen this as well. The avatar connected to the panel, launching a specialized hacking program. Seconds stretched like hours. I could almost physically feel the internal clock of the Mirage protocol ticking. The computer simulation could not last forever. Finally, the door opened with a quiet hiss. Behind it was a huge data storage. Rows of server racks, shimmering holographic displays, monitors with continuously changing information. The nerve center of Neurosphere, storing all its secrets. I took a step inside. Here, in the bowels of the corporate monster, lay the whole truth about betrayal, deception, and murder. Here began my path to justice, or to final doom. The avatar moved between the server racks, scanning data. Internal processors analyzed the information at a speed inaccessible to the human brain. In parallel, in the control center, the operator reported. The transport has reached its destination. Penetration into the Neuralink object is beginning. No one there suspected the substitution. The virtual avatar in the simulation followed the given scenario, while the real me was in the very heart of enemy territory. In the center of the storage, I discovered the main terminal, an interface for accessing the most protected data of the company. My avatar connected to the system, using the access codes provided by a leaner. Before my eyes unfolded the terrible truth about Neurosphere in all its fullness. Files on all 12 disabled operators, including myself. Detailed psychological profiles, medical histories, data on families and loved ones. Opposite my name was a note priority object, special control, ideal compatibility, and the signature, Project Curator D. Warren. Next, detailed reports on completed missions. Some of them were marked with my code number. 3 political assassinations, 4 acts of industrial sabotage, theft of technology from competitors. After each mission, a report on the memory erasure procedure. I was killing people and didn't remember it. I was a weapon in the hands of madmen, a puppet on a bloody stage. Financial transactions linked the company with shadow structures around the world. Medical protocols described the creation of ideal injuries for future operators. My injury was planned with surgical precision, not to kill, but to maim in a specific way, in order to create the perfect operator. With chilling horror, I discovered a document called Protocol Phoenix, a plan for the physical elimination of all operators in case of a threat of disclosure of the program. Diana was one of the authors of this protocol. My name was first on the list of elimination objects. The world around me seemed to freeze. Inside the avatar, my consciousness was trying to digest the monstrous truth. They were planning to kill me. And not just me, all the operators. We were expendable material, not people. Overcoming emotional shock, I initiated the copying of data to a secure server, access to which was prepared by Rachel. Copying process started, the system reported. Estimated time 10 minutes. It was longer than planned, but there turned out to be significantly more information. I activated additional security protocols to hide traces of the intrusion for as long as possible. It was at this moment that luck turned away from me. One of the autonomous security systems, independent of the general network, recorded anomalous activity and sent a silent alarm signal directly to Rivers. In the control center, a warning appeared on Rivers' personal communicator. Through the surveillance systems, I saw his face change. The mask of a self-confident leader was replaced by a grimace of cold fury. "Something's wrong," he said, rising from his seat. "The transport with the avatar, where is it really?" The technicians exchanged confused glances. Everything was going according to plan on their monitors. The virtual avatar was just penetrating the Neuralink building. Rivers instantly switched to a backup tracking system, connected directly to the avatars, bypassing the usual channels. His eyes widened when he saw the truth. The avatar was in Sector Alpha and was copying huge arrays of data. "We've been hacked," he roared. "Everyone stay in place." Diana paled, realizing the scale of the disaster. I saw her through the surveillance cameras. Confusion on her face was replaced by panic. "It's impossible," she whispered. "The chip should have blocked any independent actions." Rivers gave her a devastating look. "Your husband seems to be smarter than we thought." He frantically tried to intercept control of the avatar, but Sam's modifications blocked all attempts. On the monitor in front of me flashed lines of code. The protection system, created by my young genius, was repelling attacks. "Warren knows," Rivers said, quickly assessing the situation. "He is using the avatar to get evidence." He turned to Diana. "Go to him physically and eliminate the problem, immediately." Diana hesitated for only a second. "What do you mean? But I understand, I'll take care of it." She left the control center, taking from her bag a small case with a medical logo. Even in this critical situation, part of me refused to believe that she was really capable of killing me. Despite everything I had learned, some part of me still hoped that there was something human left in her. Rivers, meanwhile, was arming himself with an experimental electromagnetic weapon and gathering an elite security group. Through the surveillance cameras, I saw them heading towards the elevator leading to the underground levels. Mike, understanding that the plan had been revealed, unobtrusively activated an emergency protocol developed with Chris, automatic notification of all participants in the conspiracy about the failure of the disguise. A message from Sam appeared on my internal display. "They know, backup systems activated. Hold on, I'm with you." In Sector Alpha, I continued copying data while preparing for the inevitable confrontation of my avatar with those who would come to stop me. "Copying completed 70%, the system reported. 3 more minutes until full completion." It was necessary to buy time. I activated an emergency door lock for the sector. It wouldn't stop Rivers for long, but it would give precious seconds. At the same time, my consciousness was racing between two threats: Rivers, heading towards the avatar with a weapon, and Diana, heading towards my defenseless body. No matter how perfect the avatar control simulation was, my physical body remained connected to the system, vulnerable to anyone who could get to it. I had to make a choice: continue the mission here or return to my body to protect myself from Diana. And there was no time to think at all. The massive door of Sector Alpha shuddered under the impact of an external force. Another blow, and a dent appeared in the metal. They were close. Copying completed 85%, flashed the message on the display. 90 more seconds to complete. 90 seconds. Could I hold out that long? The door swung open with a deafening crash. Rivers stood on the threshold, clutching an electromagnetic weapon, a device capable of instantly disabling the Avatar's electronic systems. He was followed by 4 guards in tactical gear. "Impressive work, Warren," Rivers said, approaching slowly, "but absolutely pointless. You thought you could outsmart me." The Avatar retreated, continuing to cover the terminal with the copying data. In our situation, every second was worth its weight in gold. "Do you know what your main mistake was?" Rivers continued, approaching step by step. "You thought you were fighting a villain from comic books, and I'm just creating a future in which humanity will be freed from wars and conflicts. Preventive measures against those who threaten stability and progress. This is not a crime, but a necessity." "Interesting theory," I replied through the Avatar's voice synthesizer. "I'm sure the judge will appreciate your philosophy." Copying completed 92%, the message flashed. Rivers sneered, raising the weapon. "By the time you get to court, your brain will be so modified that you won't even remember your own name, because soon your wife Diana will take care of it." Hearing about Diana, I experienced a sudden fit of panic. She was heading towards the defenseless body, connected to the control system. Copying completed 95%, the system showed. Almost ready, but there was no time left. Deciding to win the last seconds, I directed the Avatar in an attack on the guards. The mechanical construction, reinforced by Sam, moved with incredible speed and precision, reflecting my military training. 2 of the guards were neutralized in the first seconds. The third opened fire, but the bullets only ricocheted off the reinforced armor. Rivers aimed from the EMI weapon, but I anticipated his movement and dodged. A fierce fight began, man against machine, controlled by a human mind. Rivers proved to be a dangerous opponent. A former military man, he knew all the vulnerabilities of avatars. His blow hit exactly in the joint of the hull, damaging the hydraulic system. The Avatar lost the mobility of its left arm. "I knew there was something wrong with you, Warren," Rivers grinned, striking the Avatar systems with an electromagnetic rod. "Your ideal wife was right. You can't be trusted even with a modified brain." Copying completed 99%, the message flashed, almost imperceptible among the dozens of damage warnings of the Avatar. Another powerful blow from Rivers crashed down on the Avatar's hull, causing a cascade of system failures. Copying completed, data transferred. The last message flashed before the systems began to fail one after another. At the same time, Diana penetrated the area where the operators were located. Through the fatting systems of the Avatar, I connected to the surveillance cameras installed by Sam. She moved confidently, purposefully, knowing every corner. She found me in the office, connected to the control system, helpless, immersed in virtual space. My body sat motionless in the wheelchair. Only the weak movements of my eyes under the eyelids betrayed brain activity. For a second, regret flashed in her eyes, but she immediately took herself in hand. From the medical case, she took a syringe with a clear liquid, a neurotoxin that would forever erase my personality, leaving a submissive shell. "I'm sorry, Chris," she whispered, approaching me. "Nothing personal, just business." She throws me off the wheelchair onto the floor, keeping the connection to the system so that I can't be aware of what's happening in the physical world. In Sector Alpha, the Avatar received more and more damage from Rivers' attacks. Systems failed one after another. Communication began to break. "You've lost, Warren," Rivers gloated, landing the finishing blow. "The only question is what fragments of your memory we will save after reformatting." At this critical moment, I activated the Ghost protocol developed by Sam. Consciousness instantly returns to the physical body, while the avatar goes into autonomous mode, continuing to resist Rivers, distracting his attention. I opened my eyes and saw Diana, raising the syringe over me. At this critical moment, I activated my main trump card, partially restored control over the body. In a lightning movement, the result of training with Dr. Chen, I was able to unexpectedly for her to rise on my feet and intercepted my wife's hand, knocking the syringe away. Diana recoiled in shock. You can move." "Surprise, honey," I replied, straightening up on my knees. "Dr. Chen is a real magician. Unlike you, she really wanted to help me." Between us began a desperate fight. Diana turned out to be a surprisingly experienced fighter. Now I understood that her self-defense courses were part of the training in Neurosphere. Despite the partial restoration, the movements of my legs were still limited. "You don't understand the scale of what you've interfered with," Diana shouted, stepping on me. "Rivers controls not only the company but also part of the government." "I don't care who he controls," I snapped. "He turned me into a murderer without my knowledge and you helped him." Diana stopped for a moment. "You have to understand. We are changing the world, removing those who stand in the way of progress. And for that you betrayed everything we believed in." I struggled to my feet. "For that you ordered the sniper to shoot me in the back." In Diana's eyes flashed a shadow of doubt, but she shook her head. "It's too late for moral dilemmas, Chris. Only one of us will get out of here alive." At that moment, Sam burst into the house, racing to the rescue after activating the emergency shutdown protocol. Seeing what was happening, he tried to help, but received a powerful blow from Diana and lost consciousness. She rushed at me with a knife she pulled from a hidden pocket. I blocked the blow, but with her other hand Diana grabs the fallen syringe. In a desperate struggle we rolled on the floor, my updated strength against her trained body. I twisted her arm, and the needle plunged into Diana's own neck. "Chris," she gasped, slumping to the floor. "I didn't want it to end like this." I finished the sentence, watching as the poison worked. "Me neither, Diana, me neither." In her eyes appeared a strange expression, a mixture of horror and relief, as if part of her was glad that this double life was finally over. "They'll still win," she whispered. "Rivers is just the tip of the iceberg. Behind him are people you can't even imagine." Her body went limp, her breathing stopped. The woman I once loved more than life lay breathless in my arms. Meanwhile, at the Neurosphere headquarters, the autonomous avatar completed its mission. It transmitted the last fragments of data and activated the self-destruction system installed by Sam. The explosion was not destructive, but enough to destroy all traces of modifications and prevent analysis of the technology. Rivers, receiving the alarm signal from the operator's room, understood that the plan had failed. He activated the self-destruct protocol for all data and systems of the company and tried to leave the building through the emergency exit. On the way to the helipad, he was stopped by Mike Donovan. "Get out of the way, Donovan. I paid you a lot of money to not allow such a failure, but you turned out to be a complete idiot." "Sorry, boss, but I didn't sign up for the dirty deeds you were hiding from me. Maybe I'm an idiot but not a scoundrel, and now I'm too deep in this mess to back down," Mike replied, drawing his gun. At that moment, the building was surrounded by an FBI assault team led by Rachel Cortez. The data I had transmitted became the official basis for the arrest warrant. Rivers, seeing the hopelessness of the situation, broke past Mike and ran to the roof, where he kept a personal helicopter. He managed to take off, but Rachel, anticipating this scenario, activated a backup plan, a reserve interceptor drone created by Sam, which followed Rivers, attached itself to the helicopter and blocked the control systems. The helicopter made a hard crash landing in the park. Rivers was arrested by FBI Special Forces. 6 months later, I was giving testimony in the courtroom, the last day of the high-profile trial of the leadership of Neurosphere. I sat in an advanced exoskeleton, developed by Dr. Chen, which helped me stand and even take a few steps without support. Rivers was sentenced to life imprisonment for organizing murders, industrial espionage, and experimentation on humans. The other accomplices received various sentences depending on the degree of participation. Alina Chen was fully acquitted. The court recognized that she acted under duress. Now she heads a new rehabilitation program for former Neurosphere operators. Sam, despite the concussion he received in the fight with Diana, quickly recovered and became the technical director of our new project, a company that uses avatar technology to help people with disabilities. Mike Donovan, in exchange for cooperation with the investigation, received a minimum sentence and has already been released on parole. He works as a security consultant in our company, trying to atone for past sins. After the meeting, I met with Rachel, Mike, and Sam, the team that helped me restore justice. "What now?" Rachel asked. "The FBI is offering you a permanent consultant position." "First, I want to finish rehabilitation," I replied, taking a few steps in the exoskeleton. "Dr. Chen says that I have a good chance of walking on my own in a year." "And then?" Sam asks. I pondered. Avatar technology is the future, but not for murder and espionage. I've seen other operators, people like me, deprived of the opportunity to move fully. Imagine how this technology can change their lives if used correctly. "Sounds like a plan," Mike smiled. "I'm with you." In the evening, I came to the cemetery. On the modest tombstone are Diana Warren's name and dates of life. I didn't add an epitaph. What words could reflect the complexity of our relationship, that tangled mixture of love and betrayal that bound us? "It's a pity that it all turned out this way," I said, laying flowers. "Part of me still wants to understand at what point you decided to betray me and thought that the end justifies the means." Rachel stopped next to me. "You're not to blame for her choice, Chris." "I know, but that doesn't make the pain any less." We left together. I moved slowly in the exoskeleton, each step a small victory in the long war for returning to normal life. In the last scene, Sam and I are working on a new generation of avatars, more compact, adapted for rehabilitation and everyday assistance to people with disabilities. "You know what's the most ironic thing?" I say, testing the new avatar. "Rivers wanted to create the perfect weapon, but instead gave me the opportunity to help thousands of people. The small avatar repeats my movement, not for killing or destruction, but for creating new life." My story didn't end on the day when the sniper shot me in the back. It didn't end even when I plunged the needle with poison into my wife's neck. These are just new chapters in the book that I continue to write every day, with every step in the exoskeleton, with every new avatar that gives someone hope. And if there is something that this struggle has taught me, it is that true strength is not in the ability to walk, but in the determination to get up after every fall. If you like this story, then support the author with a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your emotions in the comments. Thank you.